are going to continue to join us. Welcome again to this September edition of the World Athletics webinars. Wonderful to be here with in partnership with Mass Participation World. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Robb. I'm the CEO and founder of Mass Participation World. Delighted to be your host again tonight on what promises to be a wonderful webinar with plenty of information. We're really excited to make tonight quite interactive. We've got plenty of time for questions. Please feel free to put those in the chat as we bring to you tonight Creating Value for Global Running, the World Athletics Label Races program. We have a pretty packed program, but plenty of, as I say, buffer time to answer questions. We've allocated 2 hours. We're very certain that we should be able to be done in that time, but our commitment is if we have any questions towards the end of that, we're happy to stay back and answer those. We see this as really interactive, more of a kind of a workshop style as much as there's going to be some presentations. So just some quick housekeeping before we get underway. Given that this is a Zoom webinar, you're automatically muted. The way to communicate, please, is via the chat and in the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring those here in the studio. So feel free to pop your questions up at any stage. We'll have specific questions time at the end of each session. Some of those will be moderated by me. Some of them will be taken directly by the presenters. We are live streaming on Facebook, and a first for us tonight, which we're super excited about. We are live streaming into China. A very big thank you to CGX Management and Julia Kui and her team, subtitling it live as it goes into China, which is absolutely wonderful. We did similar on our MPW webinar last week, and it's wonderful to be working with the team from CGX Management. Quick housekeeping, some of you would have seen the COVID study that we're doing at Mass Participation World. The number's close to 4 million participants from, I think, 32 countries now, with only 5 reported COVID cases. That's a tool that many events are using around the world. If you haven't given your data, if you've recently held events, please share that with us for the benefit of many others. As I mentioned already, we'd love this to be as interactive as possible, so please feel free to put your questions as we go through. In terms of the program, opening remarks tonight, a recorded segment from Sebastian, the president of World Athletics. We then move into an intro and an official intro and welcome from Jakob Larsen, who's the director of competitions and events from World Athletics. And once Jakob's finished, and Jakob's actually joining us from Colombia, so we've got a real spread, not only in terms of audience, but presenters tonight. He's down there on a site inspection in Colombia. Following Jakob, we welcome Charlie Simon, who's the Senior Director, Research and Insights for Nielsen Sport and Entertainment. And Charlie's going to share some really insightful and fascinating statistics in terms of a study that Nielsen have done in partnership with World Athletics into recreational running, and some really interesting insights there. Plenty of opportunities after that to ask questions if you have them. We then welcome Brett Clothier, who's the head of the Athletics Integrity Unit at World Athletics, and he's going to give us some insights into the Road Races Integrity Program, a bit of a report back on what's happened in 2021, and importantly, looking forward to 2022. Also opportunities for questions once Brett is finished. And then we welcome someone who I'm certain is familiar to most of you on the call, Alessio Punzi, the road running manager of World Athletics, who's going to do a presentation on the Label Races program for 2022. And again, plenty of opportunity for questions at the end of that. We've popped already a poll into the chat there, so just to get a sense of who's in the audience, and we'll put the results of those on as we go through. And then we'll come back at the end of it. I'll do a quick wrap up. I'll be coming backwards and forwards, introducing the speakers when it's their turn to present. Alessio will do a wrap, and as I say, we've allocated 2 hours, and we aim to finish on time unless we've got a whole bunch of questions that we need to run forward with. But for now, I'd invite you just to sit back and enjoy this welcome presentation from the recorded presentation, Sebastian, President of World Athletics.
I'm so pleased to be here with you, even if we are communicating through a virtual environment. It's very important to have the opportunity to be here today and open the session of the biggest road races webinar of the year. This is a very important moment for us because the road racing industry is in its restart process. And my role as the President of World Athletics, speaking on behalf of the entire athletics community, is to place on record our immense gratitude for the bravery and loyalty you've shown in one of the toughest years in the history of the world, and to reassure you that you will have our full support and assistance. We know very well how hard the running industry and road racing has been hit from the COVID-19, and we cannot be anything else other than relieved at the resilience that you've shown and the continuing efforts to find creative ways to survive and keep the world moving in a new and very different environment. Also, many of you have continued to support elite running by staging incredible, world-breaking races before even seeing the light at the end of the tunnel last year. The London Marathon and the Valencia Marathon, a true city of running, are fantastic examples. As I've said many times before, we should never let a good crisis go to waste, and this is what we have seen happening during the pause in our competition schedule during the months of the pandemic. We used this time fruitfully, and we came up with fresh ideas, new and more sustainable concepts. A very good example of this is the recently launched World Running Championships, a two-day biennial festival of road running taking place within the heart of global cities and within the participation of elite and recreational runners. But this is not the only thing. We also now have the opportunity to review and launch a new labeling program. From 2023, it will change a lot in order to create value for road races and all those organizers at every level. The traditional system with the platinum, gold and silver and bronze level will be back in 2023. However, labels will mean much more than just a categorization of elite races. Despite the global uncertainty, more than 180 road races have applied for labels for 2021. More than 180 races whose organizers have agreed to contribute financially to an ambitious road races anti-doping program developed by the Athletics Integrity Unit. You will get a full report from the AIU today. This support speaks volumes for your trust in this program and your commitment for the long-term sustainability of distance running events. Having a clean and credible performance is a prerequisite for growth. Now we endeavour to do even better for 2022. I would also like to take this opportunity to reaffirm and clarify the role of World Athletics as the governing body of the sport in your sphere. It is certainly not to take control and own the races. In the past, you may have felt that that was our goal. It is not. And of course, in reality, is it neither the right approach or remotely feasible. They are your races and they are your show. We're here to assist you, to support you, and to work hand in hand to identify opportunities to unlock doors and to create more partnerships within your country. Member federations, race organisers, local municipalities, regional and central governments need to work together. These partnerships are vital. Our collective ambition is simple. It is to create sustainable models to safeguard the status of races and protect race organisers from potential threats. Millions of people are back in running recreationally. Today we will learn more from our research partners Nielsen Sports, who have pieced together a massive study into this very topic. Let's use this momentum to have the strongest possible return to the running business. Thank you.
Thanks for that welcome message, Sebastian Coe. Lots of key messages in there, but I think that the real theme of COVID that we've brought forward is collaboration, partnerships. We're all one industry working together to try and achieve many of the same outcomes. So thank you for that. And now an opportunity to head over to Colombia to welcome early in the morning there, Jakob Larson, Director of Competition and Events from World Athletics. Welcome, Jakob. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. First of all, greetings everyone from Cali. It's wonderful to see so many familiar names among the participants. I'm definitely looking forward to a time where we can all be together in person. Hopefully that will be soon. Now, as mentioned by Chris, I'm currently in Colombia with colleagues, and we're meeting with a local team organizing next year's World Under-20 Championships. They're looking to go one up on the very successful edition just 5 weeks ago in Nairobi, which was held under very difficult circumstances. I dare to interpret the continued planning of next year's edition as our shared determination to return to a normal world, even if it is indeed a new normal. But as you all know, we're not there yet. The trajectory is definitely not beelining towards normal. It's probably more resembling a roller coaster, to be honest, with major ups and heartbreaking downs. But we are seeing major running events taking place. We have substantial numbers in a few events worldwide. I'm sure you're all aware of the Berlin Marathon last Sunday. 2 weeks before that, the Danish Royal Run had 59,000 finishers. Now that's something. Nevertheless, we're still seeing cancellations and postponements. And as a community, road running is far from through the pandemic. I think that goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. And we're nowhere near recovery. In fact, we probably are only starting to see the beginning of a recovery, which is why the World Athletics Label Program will have as its top priority to allow races to be part of the joint program without asking the impossible. So most of you may be familiar with the 2021 program, so you'll not be surprised by the 2022 program and its framework. Since the pandemic struck, our approach has been to assist wherever we can, to continue the label program with a more flexible approach, to try to maintain the established connections between the community, the elite athletes, knowledge sharing, promotion. But it's been tough for everyone, and for some it still very much is. So our approach in 2022 will remain very much the same, a clear focus on contributing to a community that I would say is vibrant as ever before once we get through this at the global level. Now, that is our main priority, that we will still be in a very good position once we're through this. Now, but we'll get back to the plans in a minute. Because despite all the challenges right now, this is also the time to look ahead and plan for the future. So we have, as mentioned by Seb, started the discussions on the 2023 program, which, as mentioned by the president, will be a new version. It will be a next-gen program. It will be built on two main pillars. It will be about safeguarding the integrity of road running, but definitely also about adding value to the race organizers and the community as a whole. Today's session will in no small part focus on that. The road running anti-doping program sponsored in no small part by the race organizers. A program, the importance of which we simply cannot overstate, and what I guess we could describe as basically a community coming together, actually making things right, and ensuring that we have integrity within the sport. The second pillar about the intelligence, I like to say community intelligence. Business intelligence is not really appropriate. There's so much passion in our industry, so I'll go with community. So let's say the second pillar will be based on community intelligence. The report, we will see the findings, the key findings later on in this session. It's very much all about that. That's about community intelligence. As an event organizer, there's always a fire that needs to be put out. You guys, you know this way better than most. And recently, this has been even more the case than ever before. So for you guys and even other types of stakeholders in the running sphere, it can be quite tricky to find time to give priority to stop. Just stop, look outside our current plans and issues and assess where's the world heading. But that's actually the thing with mass participation. It is, as you know, essential to understand not only what a very diverse population wants, but also what are their priorities, and probably even more important, why they want it and what are they looking for tomorrow and next year. Both the anti-doping program and this report about to be presented are perfect reasons for joint community effort. Protecting integrity and gathering and sharing the relevant intelligence, that's borderline impossible for the individual race organizer or stakeholder. But the label program has proven, at least that's my belief, that together the community can make a substantial difference. And this will be the blueprint for the 2023 label program. Within the framework of the well-known multi-tier system, as mentioned by Seb, we will seek to do what any single race organizer is not ideally positioned to do. Joint funding of the anti-doping program, gathering and sharing of industry, community, intelligence, and last, but I believe definitely not least, the continued facilitation of sharing best practices among race organizers worldwide, just as we do on these webinars that we've been doing for more than a year now. We'll have to wait for 2023 for the full rollout of the new program, but this webinar could, and I believe should, be seen as a showcase of the future continued relationship between all of us, joint initiatives, sharing of knowledge. I hope you'll find the webinar useful. And once again, happy to see so many familiar faces and everyone on this session. So thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks so much, Jakob. Again, that theme of community comes through, and I think something else so important, you said we're obviously at the early stages of coming out of these challenges, and I think a great example that we are, that we were talking before we came on air, you know, you're in Colombia, and then a few days you fly to Eugene on 2 site inspections. We probably wouldn't have imagined that 3 months ago. So it's wonderful. Wishing you safe travels, a great trip in both of those destinations. Thanks for your insights, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Chris. Love to be part of this. Thank you.
By Jakob. And now a great pleasure to welcome Charlie Simon, who is the Senior Director, Research and Insights from Nielsen Sports and Entertainment. Charlie's going to share with us a really insightful presentation, lots of data that's been gathered in a study into recreational running, Nielsen official research partner of World Athletics. Welcome, Charlie. Great to see you. We'll let you take over, share your presentation, and we'll come back and I'll manage some of the Q&A for you once you've done that.
Okay, hello everyone. Great to be here. I just set one more thing up on my screen. There we go. Yeah, great to be here. So my name's Charlie Simon, and I head up the relationship between Nielsen Sports and World Athletics. And we run a number of studies for World Athletics, from this study on recreational running to brand tracking, event impact studies, and then hopefully when people return to the audience, the spectator impact studies as well. And for this particular study, we're going to I'll talk about the background and method of what we did and how we did it. Mostly we're looking at current runners. So how many are there? Who are they? So demographics in terms of age, gender, and then what are their motivations and behaviors. There's a little bit about the impact of COVID, which has actually had a positive impact on running as opposed to many other participation sports. And so we'll come to that. And then a little bit about lapsed and non-runners. So what can we learn from people who used to be runners, and how can they potentially get back into participating, before finally a few points in my executive summary. So as we've already mentioned, Nielsen's the official intelligence and research supplier for World Athletics. Again, this particular study took place in March and April earlier this year. So just a year after COVID began, really. The data is based on just shy of 8,500 interviews. And we did research in 10 countries, from Australia, Colombia, France, India, Japan, Kenya, Mexico, South Africa, UK and USA. And usually when we do studies in partnership with World Athletics, we're looking at doing at least 2 countries across the different regions globally. And then we select countries in partnership with World Athletics in terms of whether there's a country of interest, whether there's just been an event, whether there is going to be an event, or whether there is potentially going to be an event that hasn't yet been decided in the near future. So there's a mix of being a geographic spread and then also countries of specific interest to World Athletics. In terms of who we spoke to 500 people in each country who are nationally representative, and that's representative on age, gender and region. In addition to this, we collected 500 people in each country who run at least once a month or more. So straight away, we'll go into the numbers of people, or the percentage of people in each country who claim to run whatsoever. So again, there's the 10 countries across the bottom. The total column here shows that 4 in 10 people consider themselves to be runners, and 3 in 10, 30% across these 10 countries claim to run at least once a month. And the countries with the highest percentage of runners were Kenya, Mexico, and then Colombia, I think. Usually we get in these questions in online surveys a little bit of overclaim. So maybe these numbers are a little bit higher than what we would expect in reality. And again, our audience is representative of those online. So in some countries, potentially where internet penetration isn't 100%, we're speaking to a subsection of the population. But in terms of the people who we spoke to, who are representative on age, gender, and region in each of these countries, as I say, we have around 40% who claim to run at all, and 30% who run at least monthly or more. Now, one thing that we think is really interesting about running, especially recreational running, compared to most other participation sports, is that there is a really equal gender split between males and females. So if we look at all runners whatsoever, 53% are male and 47% are female. And then, you know, even if we look at the most frequent runners, 51% are male and 49% are female. And I think in most sports, in other studies that I work on and can see across the whole spectrum of sports, you know, the higher frequency tends to really skew towards male. And in general, participation skews towards male for maybe the biggest sports. You know, we're talking maybe, you know, obviously football, tennis, and other sports, for example, like golf and cycling, are very heavily male skewed, whereas recreational running is really equal gender split. And I think that has implications for race organizers in terms of the campaigns that you might run to, you know, to attract people. They should definitely be focused on both genders, not looking towards just males, for example. We should be looking for inclusive messaging for both genders, for sure. And then in terms of the average age, so on the left-hand side here, we've got the general population. So the general population's average age across these 10 countries was just over 40. And then when we look at those who run every day, the average age is 36. Those who run more than once a week, between 2 and 6 times a week, is around 38. And I think what's interesting on the right-hand side of the chart here, you can see that those who run slightly less often are actually a little bit younger than those who run more often. And I think this fits into the narrative of then, you know, maybe if you're a little bit younger, you're still playing a number of other sports, and recreational running is a complementary activity to your other running activities, so to your other sporting activities. So maybe you play football, you know, maybe you play other team sports and you tick over by going for a run every so often. But I think where recreational running potentially differs again from other participation sports is that as some of those other sports that you drop out of as you get a bit older, so your late 20s, early 30s, for whatever reason, your friends stop playing, you have a few injuries that make it hard to play high impact sports, for example. Potentially that's where we see our older sort of key target audiences around, I would say, sort of mid-20s to around 40 for road running and for event participation. So hopefully that gives you some idea in terms of targeting and messaging. We should be looking at an equal gender split and a slightly older audience than other participation sports. So there's a key target of around 25 to 40. And this slide, I appreciate there's a lot of data on this slide, but what we're looking at here is how current runners in the dark blue line describe themselves versus the middle line here, and the middle blue line is lapsed runners, so people who used to run, how they describe themselves, and then the really sort of faded blue line is people who have never run at all. And what we can see is that runners are really more positive about themselves and are more confident to associate themselves with these really positive image or personality traits. So whether it be warm and friendly, easygoing, optimistic. And I think the thing to really notice here is where there's the biggest gap between this dark blue line and the faded blue line is where we can see the biggest difference between current runners and how they describe themselves versus never runners. And it's really these really positive traits of being confident, passionate, energetic, fun and outgoing. And this is, for me, this speaks to a sort of the mental health benefits of being a runner. You know, the running community and the people who run at least once a month or more are really more likely to be more confident about themselves. And so I think, you know, there's definitely a narrative here that it's both obviously very good for you physically, for your physical health, but also for your mental health running. And we also asked people, you know, why they run. And so we can see there's different age groups here down the side, but the scale that we're looking at here is whether people say that they run because they feel they have to, but they don't enjoy it. The neutral bit in light blue in the middle, but on the right hand side, the bit we're going to concentrate on is people who are passionate about running and they say it's part of who they are. And, you know, it's those who are aged 25 to 34, 50% of those say they're really passionate about running and it's part of who they are. And then again, I think, you know, 35 to 44s and the 20 to 24s are sort of the second position. But again, it speaks to that point I made earlier on about, you know, the key target audience for road running races, I would imagine is from 25 to around sort of the later 30s. They have, you know, more disposable income and they're the most likely to be engaging in road running. Now, again, sorry, there's a lot of data on this slide, but it's a really positive story. This is about the impact that COVID has had on running. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the study took place in April 2021. And so what we're looking here on this left-hand side is we asked people how long they've been running for. And so of all runners, 13% said they began running in the past year. So that means since April 2020. And obviously the pandemic began, you know, was in its first wave around sort of February, March in 2020. So 13% began running in the past year, which was, as I say, in the middle of COVID. And we asked that 13%, you know, was COVID, did it play a part in your decision to begin running? And 9% of all runners said they began running in the last year and that COVID did play a part in their decision to begin running. And so, you know, with a lot of other sports, especially team sports and sports that take organization, I know football's had a bit of an issue, and anything that requires, you know, a lot of people and social mixing to take place have suffered as a result of COVID. It looks like COVID, in terms of just the raw numbers of people actually going out for a run, has benefited recreational running. But what we're seeing here is that almost 10%, 9% of all runners claim to have begun running in the last year, and COVID was a big reason, or was a reason why they started running. We also asked this 9% of people whether they intend to continue running once the pandemic was over. That might be wishful thinking. Obviously now we think we're more likely to be learning to live with the pandemic and live with COVID than it's going to ever go completely, or in the near future anyway. But what we're seeing here is that 9% all claim to say that they will continue running in the future. So again, that's a really positive story in terms of the potential audience for your events, that 10%, we had an influx of 10% of new runners as a result of COVID. So the other side of that coin is, you know, how has COVID impacted on people who actually had been running before COVID took place? And so that's this 87% of people. So 87% of runners, we ask, you know, do you run more frequently since COVID began? And so 22%, that's 22% of all runners say that, yes, they do run more often than they previously did as a result of COVID. That could obviously be for people working from home, or people spending more time, you know, having more time to do running, as you know, they're not traveling to and from work potentially. So 22% more frequently than they did previously. And again, as we reach a new normal, once the pandemic is over, or we learn to live with the pandemic, will they continue to run at the same level that they started doing during the pandemic? And here we see this 11% and the 9% together, that's 20%. So that's 20% of all runners claim that they'll run more often than they did do before the pandemic, once we pass the pandemic. So, I mean, the positive story there is we've got a big influx of runners for the first time since COVID began, and current runners, or people who were running beforehand, also are running more frequently. So in terms of strictly participation numbers, COVID has benefited recreational running. Now this slide looks at, we asked runners, what are the main reasons or the most influential factors on your decision to run? And there's probably no surprise in the number one. So the general health and well-being, to keep fit, is the number one reason why people run. But then we have, number 2 and 3 is, there's the lack of the sort of physical barriers, the fact that you can go at your own pace. You don't need too much equipment to start. So it's really, you open the door, you put your trainers and your shorts and you can go and have a run. That's really a benefit, and it is a motivator for people to go running. But then in fourth position here, again, it's that idea of the mental health benefits that to help me de-stress, and that was played back to us in lots of other studies we've done as well. That people really, they feel it's a bit of me time, almost a bit of meditation time where you're not thinking about anything else, and it really does help to take you out of the whatever you were doing before you were going running. When you're actually running, you're clearing your mind, and that mental health aspect, I think, is really a key one, and a real difference between running and other sports potentially. Now this slide is looking at how many people across all running occasions you run with. So if we just focus for the beginning on this top left-hand pie chart, this is amongst all runners. So what proportion of running occasions are you on your own versus when you're running with others? So what we see here is that 3/4, 74% of all running occasions are solo events, and just over a quarter, 26%, are with other people. And I think we included this question because there was some anecdotal feeling that running was a very sort of social sport, and while it can be, I think it's important to know that a majority of running occasions are solo running occasions. And on average, of these, there's 26% of running occasions which are social. The number of people that you tend to run with is yourself plus 2 other people. There's 2.3 other people. And this is the second column is amongst those who run every day. And those who run with every day are more likely than those who, for example, run 1 to 3 times a month to run with other people. So 30% of their running occasions are with other people. And when these people who run every day, the most frequent runners, run with other people, they're most likely to run with 3 other people. And I think that makes sense intuitively. If you're really keen on running and you do it very often, you're more likely to be a member of a club, for example, or to mix with people who have similar interests to you. And so you're more likely to know more people who also run. So again, intuitively, that makes sense that, if you run often, you're more likely to run with other people and to run with people in bigger groups as well. Now, I know this is a slide about running related spend. And I think Alessio shared a version of this slide through LinkedIn just, I think, yesterday or the day before. And essentially what we're looking at is, where do people spend money across these categories in a typical year? And I suppose we can, this column here, so the total amount of spend, is around just over 200 euros, 203 euros per year on average across those countries. But the proportion of spend, so this is that first column here, this is in the percentage. You can see that the majority of spend is running shoes, running clothes. So that's 58% of all spend is sort of clothes and shoes. And then wearables, 13%, travel to and from running events is 13% as well. So obviously that's not inconsiderable amount of money specifically related to running events. And then, I think just another thing to highlight here is that the majority of spend is really by the group that run once a week or more. So 233 euros per annum amongst this group. And then if you look at the group that run less than once per week, that's pretty much half of the percentage of those who run more than once a week. So there's quite a big drop off there, and it's very much in line with running frequency, the amount that people spend on running in general. I think this slide is of particular relevance to the audience today, hopefully, is that we asked people if they were interested in running in the different types of events you can see across the top. So road-based, trail, mountain-based, obstacle and track running events. If they said yes, we then asked this question, which is, what is your preferred distance for example, a road-based running event? And of all runners, it's very clear that the two distances that are most appealing to our audience was either, less than 5 kilometers or 6 to 10 kilometers. And I think, I suppose the implications for that are if you have an event which doesn't have one of these two options, one of these two distance options associated with it, then it's potentially worth considering doing, a multi-distance event to appeal to this running audience where, the majority of runners sit. It's obviously sort of less difficult for people to run these distances than some of the longer distances, and potentially the win in terms of the people who would engage with your event versus the amount of work it would be to arrange it is definitely a cost-benefit analysis worthwhile working through. And then I'll just flip back to the previous chart. I think, what's interesting is that of all runners, just 3% or 4%, if you look at this score here, 4% people would like to run a marathon or more than marathon distance. But what we see here, this is from a Nielsen database of sponsorship deals. So this is the percentage of, this is the total spend in 2019 and sponsorship investment in running. And we can see that of this 97 million euro that we have in our database, over 3/4 of that is related to marathons, and just 22% related to other disciplines. And that's obviously, there's reasons why brands and are investing in marathons. Obviously, those are the biggest events in terms of media exposure and the heritage and the sort of the fame that you get from being associated with those events. But on purely the numbers of people who are interested in running other disciplines, so that those less than 10 kilometers, you think that there's an opportunity here to up this percentage of the pie, because potential sponsors or partners have the opportunity to reach and connect with many more people who want to run distances lower than marathon length. So I think that's one potential opportunity that we've seen in our data here, that potentially there's underinvesting in lower distance events. And again, this is the running deal size. So obviously sort of sponsorships worth over 5 million. They only represent 1% of all sponsorships in recreation or in road running. And they'll obviously be associated with the bigger events like the London marathons, the Berlin marathons, etc. But obviously this sort of longer tail, where most 46% of all sponsorship deals were worth under 100K. I would say, if you're looking at those smaller distance events, then you're obviously looking at deals with the smaller overall value, but potentially higher volume of deals overall. Okay, so that was looking at current runners. I've just got a few slides now on lapsed and non-runners. So first of all, this was a question, which is, what's the main reason why you stopped running for lapsed runners, so people who used to run? So if we just concentrate on the bar chart here in blue for a start, what we really see is the number one reason why people say they stopped running was a lack of time in general, followed by injury, and then followed by a lack of motivation. So we'll just keep that in mind, and I'll switch over to this table on the right-hand side of the chart now. So this table is, we asked people, at what age did you stop running? And so what we can see here is that those who stopped running between the ages of 10 and 34, the number one reason that they stopped running was, they said, a lack of time in general. And again, I think that can fit with the narrative I described earlier on, which was that, potentially these younger runners are supplementing their other fitness or exercise regimes with a run from time to time. But potentially, as they drop out of other sports, say your football or anything that's high impact, maybe when they get into their 30s, we know that potentially they can come back as well. So that's something to keep in mind for those younger runners who stopped running. For the people over 35, the biggest reason to stop running was injury and medical conditions. And I think we all can empathize with that one from time to time. I'm sure we know people who can't, or maybe we've had issues in the past as well. I know I have. This next slide is the likelihood to begin running in the next 12 months. So for lapsed runners on the left-hand side and people who have never run on the right-hand side. So we asked people, what is the chance that you'll go running again in the next 12 months? So on the right-hand side, lapsed runners, a quarter of people said there was a very strong chance that they will go running in the next 12 months. But what we can see, the low-hanging fruit here in terms of lapsed runners are those aged 16 to 34. So you can see between this group here, around just less than 40% of this age group, people who used to run, said there's a really strong chance that they'll go running again in the next year. And for non-runners, it was most likely that this younger age group of 16 to 24s would begin running when they haven't done in the past. And so I think in terms of implications, again, we talked about, if you're looking to try and attract people to your events, you want to do something that's inclusive in terms of gender, looking to attract people of age around their 20s to their 30s. And I think this is borne out in this data here as well. If we're looking at something from, say, around their mid-20s to around their late 30s, that's sort of the real low-hanging fruit and the target in terms of the audience for running races. And this is my final slide of data. So we asked lapsed runners and non-runners what would be the biggest factors to encourage you to begin running again or to begin running at all. And we found the same three reasons. It's sort of a social element, really. So starting at the same time as a friend or a partner is both the biggest reason for lapsed and non-runners. There's advice from a health professional for obvious reasons. And then the third one I think was quite interesting was, someone that who runs encouraging me or a runner to start running. And so again, in terms of implications for potential for race organizers, this would be, is there anything we can do to incentivize people to add a friend, or can we do family tickets? Can we give discounts to people if they refer friends to the race? Because we know that social aspect is really important to upping participation. So that's it really in terms of the data from me. I've just got a few points I'd like to reiterate. I think I have enough time. So for current runners, as I said, the distinct from other participation sports is that running has an equal participation split. Runners themselves have great confidence to associate themselves with positive personality characteristics, things like passion, optimism. And then we saw the impacts of COVID. So 13% of all runners began in the last year. Since April 2021, and they said that COVID played a part, and over a fifth of runners claim to run more as a result of the pandemic. And the top motivators to run are health, the ability to go at your own pace, and not needing much equipment, so not many physical barriers. And all runners agree that running is really good for the mind and body as well. And lastly, for lapsed and non-runners, the biggest reason for stopping running was a lack of time. And that was especially the case for those aged under 35. For those aged over 35, injury was the biggest factor for stopping running. And then we saw, age plays a significant part in whether either lapsed or those who've not run before will go running in the next year. So, we saw 37% of those aged under 44 say that there's a strong chance that they'll go running in the next year. And we say that has implications for our messaging and who we target. And the top three factors for lapsed and non-runners to start, beginning at the same time as a friend, advice from a health professional, and encouragement from a current runner. So yes, thank you for your time. Hopefully that was a useful presentation for you. And I don't know, Chris, if there was any questions for me to tackle or any feedback, anything that I can answer from here on.
Hi, Charlie. Welcome back again. Thanks for those great insights. Lots of great things I picked up there. There are a couple of questions, so let's tackle those first, and then I might pick up a couple of insights as well. So two from Tracy Sunderland. So the first one was fairly early on in your presentation. In terms of being a runner, how many times per month? Is it once per month, or when do you classify them as a runner?
So yeah, I mean, we had a number of classifications in this presentation. I think I showed people who say that they're running at all. So I think that was the 40% of people say that they're a runner at all. And then we also had those who run once a month or more, which was 30%. We do have a bit more, a bit more detail on that as well. But for the purposes of this, I didn't want to show too many data points and get into the weeds too much. But yeah, that data is there if required.
Wonderful, thank you. And then also another question from Tracy. The running size deal 22.1% for other disciplines or distances. Can you respond to that? I wasn't quite sure exactly what that meant, but hopefully you've got the gist of that.
Yeah, so I think that was the chart where in Nielsen Sports database of sponsorship deals, where we pick up a number of sponsorship deals from publicly available data, we're able to see that of all sponsorship deals that were announced, 76% were for marathons. And I think the number was around 22% for other disciplines. So I think it just means other distances, other road racing disciplines, essentially. So the point really there was that, you know, there was a real appetite for different distances other than marathons, but the investment in those disciplines from a sponsorship point of view actually could be looked at as being underinvested.
Thanks, Charlie. And I think Brendan Riley made a comment in the chat there around, you know, maybe being skewed from a marathon perspective because of the obvious broadcast rights. And, you know, maybe that is your marathon majors, but I think, you know, there are a number of marathons that maybe don't get as much broadcast. And I guess the point maybe is, what are the opportunities is what you're saying. It, you know, might seem easy on the face of it, but, you know, are we looking more broadly to say, what are the opportunities that might exist in terms of that space, rather than sitting back and saying, well, it's the marathons that get the big money and it's not an opportunity for the rest of us. And I think that kind of maybe segues into one of the other comments by Brendan in the point there about no one, I think it was in your survey, or very few people talking about competing or a challenge. And you know, I must admit, I've been saying this for a while. We seem to, the narrative we use is races, and clearly in the context of this webinar, we're talking about label races. There's a community here that's engaged and on this webinar that are putting on races. But as an industry, are we missing this opportunity to create experiences? What percentage of our participants are actually racing, and what of them are out there? You know, the other points you made was community, social. I want to restart if I can start at the same time as others. Are we as an industry really harnessing those opportunities to really build community and have this opportunity to be together rather than to race?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's clear, I'd say, I think one of the things that differentiates running from other participation sports from that I see is that, you know, that mental health aspect, that ability to de-stress, the importance of the sociability. You know, as I say, these things are all really important. And if we can talk up those aspects in our communications and when we're trying to attract runners to our races, I think that would help.
Thanks, Charlie. And then, you know, a couple of other quick ones. 20% will run more often. Health, the big focus, as you've highlighted. Some great insights from Steve Fleck, who does a lot of announcing, commentating in Canada. He asked the question, he's been asking the question. Canada's just recently, and in the last couple of weeks, returned to live events. 10 to 15% of people on start lines put their hand up and said that they were pinning on a bib for the first time, which is a wonderful indication of the opportunity for people to come into the events. Backing up some of that opportunity of people looking to run in 1 to 5 and 6 to 10K options. So some potential opportunities there in terms of if you've got a festival and don't have a shorter distance, or if you're creating a new concept, the lower distances are really important. Charlie, some really great insights. Thank you for joining us. We'll bid you farewell and thank you very much. And whilst you're logging off and I'm getting ready to welcome our next presenter, there was a message on there from Jean Manuel Botella, and he was saying, happy birthday, Sebastian Co. So I guess we all pass that on. Maybe that's one of the reasons, and I think justifiable reasons. He might be busy with his family today, but happy birthday, Seb, from all of us. As we get ready to welcome our next guest, and that is Brett Clothier, who's the head of the Athletics Integrity Unit at World Athletics. And Brett's going to talk to us about the Road Races Integrity Program. Welcome, Brett. Good to see you back.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I'll just share my screen. Okay, I think we're ready to go now. Hello, everyone. It's really exciting to be on this call with such a huge audience. I know my team here at the AIU is really excited to hit the autumn with a lot of amazing races scheduled throughout the world. You know, it's kind of a favorite time of year for us, the autumn and spring, when the big races start and are punching out around the world every week. So it's a real privilege to be here. Today I'm going to take you through a report really on our 2020 program. We are producing an annual report. The World Athletics annual report was for 2020 was published just last week, I believe, and off the back of that will be we're finalising and we'll produce a report of our full report of our 2020 program. But I'll share what we have with you today. I'll also give you an update on where we are with 2021 and take you into what's planned for 2022. So to begin with, going straight into it, our 2020 program. If you recall, in 2020, the program was intended, started off quite differently to how it ended. It was intended to be a program for out-of-competition testing for a pool of 300 gold and platinum label athletes. The funding for the program was going to raise about 3 million for the year to do an extensive testing program for all of those 300 athletes to the same level that we do for our elite athletes in the track and field who are going to the Olympics. Just as a reminder for everybody, you know, the rationale, the reason we needed to do this was because there was no funding for, or there was completely inadequate funding for out-of-competition testing for elite road runners, professional road runners, prior to this program being put in place. And the overwhelming majority of our big label road races were being run and won by athletes who were just not subject to any out-of-competition testing whatsoever. So there's a huge threat to the integrity of the sport. The sport came together, led by World Athletics, to fund this new integrity program to ensure the credibility of the sport, which is crucial, and as Jakob talked about earlier. So this program got underway in 2020, but then the pandemic struck and we had to really restructure it quite quickly. The 3 million in funding got cut back to a bit over 1 million. And we had to adjust our program. Rather than 300 athletes fully tested in the registered testing pool, we separated out into 40 very elite athletes at the top end of the pool who were tested in the same program as the elite athletes going to the Olympics. And the remaining 260 we put into a next tier of monitoring pool, where we were doing a lot more pre-competition group testing opportunities because we wanted to maintain our athlete biological passport profiles for those athletes for the future, to ensure the future of the program. So we have there up on the screen the expenditures and how that related to the program in 2020. These are to those who are on previous calls throughout 2020. These are explained and forecasted to you in quite some detail. And, you know, we stuck to what was forecast and what we said we'd do in relation to those actuals. The majority of the program is spent on actual anti-doping testing, but it's certainly not all the program. If you recall, a big part of what we do is intelligence led. That's a really central part of our program. It's really easy to just write a check and send a whole bunch of tests out there randomly, but that's not what the AIU does and how we operate. The reason our program has credibility is because it's focused on intelligence. We place tests at the right time for the right athlete, for the right substance. We do extensive investigations that inform not just only our testing, but also our education programs. And that's why we have invested a lot in this program, not just on the testing, but on staff to manage that intelligence and to supervise the testing, to supervise the investigations, etc. So to recap what happened in 2020, here is our testing program. Just the highlights of it, if you like. The total 1,325 was the total number of tests conducted which involves 1,751 samples and 2,000 separate analyses conducted. And interesting things to take out of this slide, you can see the breakup of the testing pool, the 300 athletes in the testing pool, very heavily skewed towards Kenya and Ethiopia, which is no surprise to all of you. One thing about our approach is that we don't test every athlete in exactly the same way in the pool. We break them up into, we do extensive intelligence gathering, scientific analysis, and break them up, the athletes up into risk categories. You can see there the breakup at the bottom in red, yellow, orange, and green, a traffic light system, which indicates how many athletes we have in each group of risk. Red, of course, being the higher risk athletes who get far more attention than the green. Here is what happened in 2020 in terms of our testing month by month. You can see in January, February, we started off with a full pace program. Then the pandemic hit and the testing really dropped off in April, May and June. And we recalibrated, communicated with the race organisers and made the plan to attack the second half of the year, especially focusing on more pre-comp tests and also the group testing, because of the athletes are by and large in Kenya and Ethiopia. We were able to do large group testing missions to build biological profiles of the athletes, which is very important to the future of the program. And those tests were rolled out in the second half of the year. So it's a very different sort of profile in 2020 to what we would see in other years. Analysis of our testing by type, even split between blood and urine, and in most cases we collected blood and urine samples at the same time. The blood is mainly focused on the ABP, and we have a laboratory that we funded and set up ourselves in Nairobi so that we could do this, really have a great ABP program based in East Africa. Blood tests need to be tested within, you only have a short time frame to transport them to a laboratory to do the ABP testing. And prior to the AIU coming about and funding this laboratory in Nairobi, ABP testing was very, very difficult in East Africa, which was obviously a very, very serious problem for the integrity of road races. But we've solved that by funding a laboratory in Nairobi. So now we can really heavily test the ABP, and we rely on it quite a lot in our program. So all that testing results in this. These are cases that we ran in 2020 related to road races. And, you know, up on the slide there's 80-something years of penalties that were handed down. Our anti-doping testing is a little different to many others in that we actually sort of catch people and run really strong cases. And there are some really interesting ones up there, notable ones, El Majub Dazar, who in 2019 won at Prague and Fukuoka, who at the conclusion of that year was caught on an ABP violation. It was a significant case because he improved very rapidly and came up into the top rank of marathoners, but we were able to turn that around into an important ABP case. There are also a couple of important tampering cases there, which are a really important part of what we do. Whereabouts is extremely important part of the process as well. If we're going to do out of competition testing, we need to be able to find the athletes to test them and make sure they're not evading testing. So Wilson Kipsung, obviously a very well-known athlete, was banned for whereabouts failures and tampering, which is lying about his case, producing false evidence. Another very significant athlete whose case is currently still under appeal for ABP is Daniel Wanjiru. There is also, unfortunately, the winners of the Sofia Marathon last year. Both men and women's were positive to EPO in the year. So, I mean, these cases There's a lot of them and quite significant high-level athletes winning serious races. The point of this is that this is what we're doing for the credibility of the sport. At the time we announced cases, it might kind of seem like short-term pain, but this is these are the steps towards a credible and clean and sustainable sport into the future. Just a note about some of our investigation capability. I talked about our staffing levels before, and we have dedicated staff to this program 100% on investigations and intelligence gathering. This photo here is just an example of the investigations we conduct. This is in the case of Wilson Kipsung, his whereabouts case. The excuse he gave for one of his whereabouts failures was that he was stuck in a traffic accident and missed his test. And he's sent through this photo of an overturned truck, which caused a huge traffic jam, he said. And he provided a sworn statement from his friend and driver to say that this traffic accident happened, and here's the photo, and this is why I missed the test. It wasn't my fault. So this was a matter for our investigation team to look into, that to scour, to find evidence to verify this traffic accident took place. They eventually did found evidence that this accident actually occurred, did take place, but it happened 3 or 4 months after the relevant missed test, in fact. We found evidence of it through a video report, and we took a statement from the television news crew that filmed the real life accident to verify the real date of this accident, and this eventually formed part of his tampering case and his current ban. So that's the sort of work we have to engage in to ensure the integrity of the program and athletes aren't providing false explanations. So the investigations are sort of a crucial part of what we do as enforcement, but we're also educating athletes, and there's a huge emphasis and a huge part of the resources we put into this program. What we're really looking to in the future is a sustainable, credible future for road running, and education's at the heart of that. So in terms of our 2020 program, in December 2019, we did these direct outreach face-to-face sessions in Kenya and Ethiopia. A huge turnout of athletes, coaches and managers in person in Eldoret and Addis Ababa. And these are really, really successful programs, and really well. The engagement levels of athletes were very, very high. It was very, very pleasing. We also then, after COVID struck, it was a real opportunity to move to virtual sessions, which we could run a lot more regularly. And we did that in 2020, and this has continued into 2021 as well. We ran 12 different sessions for the road running pool in all different languages, including American Swahili translations. These are extremely well received. Our attendance for the label athletes was 70%, which is, for these kind of education sessions, is a really very high level of engagement and attendance. We also did education sessions for the athlete support persons, coaches, and agents, which were also really well attended. These sessions are, I'm proud to say, a great success. Like we couldn't finish the sessions. There were so many questions, so much interaction, so much engagement. You see there, the sessions ran for a long time thanks to the number of questions and engagement levels of the audience. So they were a real success in 2020, and this has continued on definitely into 2021 as well. And you see here some of the comments from famous Kenyan and Ethiopian coaches and athletes. So I won't read them out, but you can see them on the screen. What was one thing that's really impressive about the level of engagement is the leadership shown by more senior coaches and and athletes in this session, really becoming a kind of peer-to-peer learning experience. So yeah, these education sessions have been a great success and are continuing on and being developed. So the 2021 program, I'll just touch on very briefly because you'll receive a full report on this program once the year is finished. But in summary, this program was very similar resources and plan to 2020. Because of what's happened with the pandemic and the movement of the races, there's a very heavy focus, of course, on the second half of the year. And the team at the moment is absolutely in the thick of organising testing related to all the races, especially pre-competition testing, which is planned at 30 plus races in the second part of the year. We've just completed about 180 group tests in Kenya and Ethiopia, which have taken place in September. So we're really in the thick of this, and it's planned to work along the same lines as the 2020 program. So the full report will follow. In terms of the 2022 program, as Jakob indicated, the financial funding for this program is going to follow or roll out, and Alessio will speak to this in more detail, really along the same lines, similar lines to the program this year. But we're having a slightly different approach. It's like and there are some important differences in our approach as we head into the third year of this, I guess you'd call it reduced funding model compared to what we had originally intended. We're increasing the registered testing pool, those who are athletes who are on a full testing program, like they were going to the track and field pool, going to the Olympics. We're increasing that from 40 to 80, so having a much larger group who are on that full pace program. Will be, in terms of this full pace program, we're going to be really focusing on doing extensive performance monitoring and having a significant contingency of funding so that we can add more athletes to make sure we're really adding the right athletes, have the right athletes in that core group of 80. So they're the very, very elite end. Secondly, the extended pool. If you recall, the pool we're working with since 2020 has been kind of a fixed group of 300. We're changing that approach into 2022. We'll have an extended monitoring pool between 120 and 200 athletes. But flexibility is really the key here. We want to really spend a lot of our intel and resources analysing who are the athletes who are actually racing, who are the ones coming through, to make sure we're including the right athletes in this monitoring pool. And there'll also be a big contingency to add to that group, which will start at about 120. These athletes won't be required to do the full whereabouts like the top 80, but they will be required to do some whereabouts, particularly around their competition schedule and what races they're planning to do and their travel around competition. And these athletes will be selected in priority for pre-competition and the pre-announced tests and group tests. So just I guess the main takeout in terms of changes from this year and 2020, RTP, the main RTP increasing from 40 to 80, and there's more flexibility in our extended monitoring pool. So remember, the idea behind this all is heading into 2023, when we hope to have a fuller program back up and running, is that we don't want to start from scratch. We want to have this extended monitoring pool under control, still controlled, still giving us understanding of their competition schedule and high level whereabouts. We still are able to have profiles developed for them, so when things start back in full pace, we're not going back to the Wild West. So just some notes about the pre-competition testing and group testing missions. Importantly, the pre-competition testing this is really being added to the program. The plan is, as a especially good deterrent, we'll be looking at least 35 pre-competition missions at label races across all label types. These will be not pre-advertised, but we'll work with the racers. But we want to have them sort of no notice to the athletes, so they don't know in advance whether their race will have a pre-competition mission organised. These are really important additions to the program, as well as the group testing missions and planning for the advanced testing missions we'll have. Another important thing to add to our program for 22 is the in-competition testing. So as you all know, there are minimum requirements for in-competition testing required by the label regulations. Quite frankly, many of you have to individually negotiate in the past these to conduct these tests and pay for them, and the prices we've seen in some of those are very high. So on request, and this is an invitation to you, is we can make at the AIU available our preferential rates for sample collection and analysis through our providers. Obviously, the amount of testing we do throughout the world, we get very good rates for these, and these are potentially significant savings on your in-competition testing costs. So anyone interested should contact us and we can organise quotes, and you can compare what you normally pay to compare to what price you could be paying, and then we can coordinate centrally these contracts. So this is heading towards what we're considering for 23 and beyond under the new program, is offering a fully centralised model for in competition testing, where we can essentially have a centralised contract, and anyone who wants to opt in can just do it, and we'll take over the organisation of that from you, which can reduce some of the headache. But that's something we're thinking of going fully into in 2023. So that's the overview, and Chris, happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Brett. Some great insights there, and obviously a lot of different elements to the program. I'm sure that that picture of the overturned truck will be remembered by many, and give some sense of some of the challenges you face. Thanks for sharing that. I'm just interested, the last point you make in terms of being able to potentially benefit from some of the reduced testing costs. Is that you'd like people to directly contact you or through Alessio?
Either way. We're happy. I'm happy to receive anything directly or through Alessio, and we'll put you in touch with our testing team to arrange the quote, and you can take it from there.
Fantastic. We'll pop your email in the chat as well. We've already put Alessio's on earlier. We've got a couple of questions here as well, Brett, from Abdullah Muhammad. Thanks for the educative program. Can we get more light on recent disqualification of winners and athletes who have abused the new shoes regulations in road runs? Is there no provisions of checking that athletes have the right dress, including shoes, before the races to prevent such inconveniences?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and it is something we are looking at really closely with World Athletics. Following Tokyo, World Athletics are reviewing the rules, and Jakob, I'm sure, can jump in at any time here as well, are reviewing the rules around shoe technology, the requirements for shoes, but also the processes for how this will be policed and checked. The Athletics Integrity Unit can and will have a part to play in that. And part of the discussion, which will be ongoing, is how that applies to label races and which level of races. So the first priority for World Athletics is obviously the World Championship events. But then the next question is, well, how does that apply to label races? So that's an ongoing discussion that we're having with World Athletics, and will be communicated to the races in due course.
Right, thanks, Brett. I think Jakob's still here. Jakob, you want to add anything to that?
Happy to do so, Chris. Yeah, but it's no big secret that the shoes has been a major headache for a lot of organizers. So what we're doing right now, obviously we have a working group right now assessing the current rules. Honestly, there's a feeling that the current rules regarding road shoes are in a pretty good shape. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's mostly about protocol, actually. How do you as an organizer work with these rules? So that's basically the main priority on our radar right now, is to make sure that there is a easy to apply protocol for race organizers. That's very much on the radar right now. We're looking to build on the experience we've learned from having events like Tokyo and the feedback we get from organizers. So hopefully at the end of the year, we will be able to provide all organizers with an easier to apply protocol. We definitely know that this is not easy to do when you're on the ground.
Yeah, I must say, Chris, just, you know, we've discussed this with World Athletics, and it might not be in place immediately for next year, but we've always seen as the most efficient way to, if this issue needs to be controlled, is to do it in conjunction with doping control. Because we have, after every race, chaperones identifying the people to be tested, including the winners, who are taking them to drug testing station, and etc. So I think my view in the longer term, there's a bit of water to go under the bridge, that we think that there is a readily practical way to get this done in a way that works for everybody. There's quite a few things to work through, but we don't see it as being insurmountable.
That's great to hear. And again, the point, collaboration coming through. Thanks, Jakob, for jumping back on. I got a couple more questions here, so let's go. So we've got here Mohawi Kevlazicki. Hope I've got your pronunciation right there, Mohawi. Brett, does a doping ban trigger the retesting of that athlete's frozen samples from prior Olympic Games and World Championships, especially medalists?
As a general proposition, yes, but not necessarily straight away. The thing with the retesting is that you only really get one chance to open and retest a sample. So you kind of wait till the right time when you have better improvements in technology to do the new testing. So obviously, in terms of deciding which samples to test, if someone's had a previous retesting, if you're going to do a retesting, you very much prioritize those athletes with previous doping bans, but you still need to wait until there has been developments in the testing technology so that it's useful to do.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks for covering that one. Going back to the shoe one, there's one here from Davor. Chain of custody for collected shoes, ? How to get shoes back after post-event analysis is done. And my sense is, and again, welcome to jump back in, Jakob, that this is a process that's in discussion and in development, but anything you'd like to add to that? And your further comment there, current process is far from being solid in your opinion, Davor. Over to you there, Jakob.
Yeah, so in principle, obviously, the organizers, they do have the right to take possession of an athlete's shoes and send them for further examination. In principle, this could mean that the shoes will need to be dismantled, so to speak. And obviously, that has in certain cases, that isn't far from ideal. There is a protocol in place to get shoes back on those rare occasions. It's mostly about world records, to be honest. That being said, this is part of what we said about the protocol. How do you actually deal with this? Because the protocol is actually there, but there's a lot of uncertainty about this. Obviously, we all need to learn the system. So we are looking to make this easier to understand, easier to follow, easier to apply at all levels. I get what Davor is saying. It is right now, there's a lot of uncertainty, but the principle is if a shoe needs to be submitted for further study, it will be, if possible, if the shoe still is in one piece, the shoe will be sent back.
Thank you, Jakob. Hopefully that answers your question, Davor. We've got one here from Cam Hart of the Gold Coast. Brett, given a strong need for intelligence collecting, does the AIU have a whistleblower support program or considered one to support athletes who may provide intel leading to a doping detection?
Yes, we do. So our first of all, in terms of whistleblower policies and whistleblower support, we have an online ability to make a report, and all the policies are laid out there about what will happen if someone makes a report. Most importantly, what we have is a really experienced and highly skilled investigative team, people who have got really great experience in international criminal matters, law enforcement and security services, who are used to dealing with crime at this kind of level, and are very much used to working with confidential sources, whistleblowers, and know how to protect those people. So that's the most important message to get out there, that people can really have confidence that they're dealing with real professionals when they come and talk to us. But they are really importantly, people should know that they can speak to us without any obligation. We're happy to just get information. It doesn't mean they have to become a star witness or put themselves in jeopardy. A lot of the time, we really appreciate just getting the information, and we can then figure out other ways of turning it into a case without needing to put someone in harm's way or make them concerned for themselves.
Thanks, Brett. And a bit of a follow-on from that one from Michael Buting. Intelligence is an important pillar of anti-doping. Is it also used to investigate abuse of TUEs?
Yes, absolutely. So TUEs is a really important point, and so we're monitoring the TUEs that are granted. We're monitoring the TUEs that are applied for. We are, just for people's knowledge, at our level at ARU for international athletes, with our TUE panels are very strict on TUEs. There are very few TUEs granted in at international level in the sport of athletics. It's quite more liberal domestically, but for us it's very strict.
Thanks for that, Brett. And let's take one last one from Wayne Larden, coming back to the shoe one. Hello there, Lardy, calling in from Sydney. Wouldn't it be better to check shoes before race rather than ask for them back after the race?
In an ideal world, yes, but it's it's just a question of the amount of resources and required to do that. That's the issue. So it would be better, but the question is, do we have the resources, and does the industry, all the way down to bronze label races, have the capacity to do that for a whole bunch of people to race?
Thanks for that, Brett. Thanks again for your presentation, for taking all of those questions. Let's say thanks again to you virtually from everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks for those great insights.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
Bye, Brett. And now, as we head into the final lap, delighted to welcome someone who I'm sure is familiar to all of you, Alessio Punzi, Road Running Manager of World Athletics. Welcome, Alessio, to talk about the label races program for 2021. Hi, Alessio.
Hi, Chris, and hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here with so many of you. Before we talk label races, though, I'd just like to complete Brett's answer to the question that Wayne asked about shoe checks. When Wayne was asking, wouldn't it be best to check shoes before the race? In reality, we are developing a protocol, and it's already being used at some of the biggest races that are taking place now, World Marathon Majors races, as well as the Vienna event where the athlete was disqualified. And this protocol, which is not enshrined in the rules, so it's very much a common sense thing now, as opposed to what hopefully will be in the future a very codified protocol, includes checking the shoes and making sure the athlete knows before the race which shoes are allowed. So technically, we are bringing copies of the list of approved shoes. Athletes are being sent this list in the days preceding the race. There is a shoe declaration form that in many of these races athletes have to fill in as a precondition to get in their bib. And so everyone knows that these certain shoes cannot be worn. What happened in Vienna was unfortunate. The athlete just probably didn't even mean it. Most likely didn't even mean it. He was just wearing training shoes instead of approved shoes, which he owned anyway. So it's a process that is far from being ideal, but it's a work in progress. With the creativity and the knowledge of real world of race organizers, this has already been improved. Meaning what we had thought in June is already different from what is happening now, because some race organizers have come up with very good ideas to make it more simple, streamlined, and more effective. As with everything, as with anti-doping as well, education of the athlete is key, and we are really together with organizers insisting on that point, making sure that the athletes know what they can wear. Now, talking about label races for 2022, I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And I assume everyone can see this presentation, right? Excellent. So in this 15, 18, 20 minutes presentation, I'm going to illustrate the rationale and the mechanics of the label races program for 2022, highlighting what the few changes are with the current program. And I would also like to use this opportunity, given that there are so many of us connected at the same time, to address any general interest questions related to the program. Feel free to type them in the chat box at any moment, or WhatsApp me, WeChat me. I've got my phone here, and we will try to answer them live as long as they are interesting for everyone. So it should be clear that the labor races program doesn't have to necessarily exist. If it exists, it is because we, as the governing body of the sport, realize that there are a few macro purposes that it helps to serve. The first one is to create value for race organizer, wherever that is possible. For many operators, for many event organizers and partners, getting a World Athletics label is an important marketing tool. So for some of them, if the labor program didn't exist, it wouldn't make a difference, but for many it does make a difference. So even under the challenging circumstances of this pandemic, hopefully post-pandemic phase, we still wanted to have the program also in the program enables the continuation of our joint efforts to protect the integrity of the sport, essentially to fund what Brett has been describing with so many details earlier today, generating resources for anti-doping through a structure that is sustainable, that is proportionate, and that is well balanced between all the different actors of the sport, but also, and this is why we have different tiers of label, spending resources wisely, making sure that the integrity effort, the integrity framework is matched to the athlete earning potential and to the race profile risk. And the third is to encourage investment in elite sport. From time to time, there are talks of just making of the label races something not related to elite sport. We feel that it isn't really the best idea, given that we're World Athletics and we should care first and foremost for elite sport. So we kept in the system, even under the circumstances, a system of incentives so that organizers who are willing and able, sometimes legally able to invite star athletes from overseas and to provide adequate prize money can be recognized for that by having superior labels. We've also introduced for 2022 a new option that wasn't there in 2020, in 2021, what we call Pathway 2 for elite and elite platinum races in the context of continuing travel restrictions, and we will see what that means in a second. But like we said at the beginning, it's a light touch approach. It really is a simple program, few strings attached, it's low cost. It's not about us, it's about your races and it's about the sport. So if there are ways we can help, we are happy to do so. If you feel that for this year, the label is not for you, absolutely fine, and we hope to see you again in 2023. The label races program is just trying to contribute to create value in many ways to the running industry and to the elite distance running elite scene. There are many other activities that World Athletics and the running unit in particular are or should be committed into around running, around elite running. For example, lobbying around return to participation, which is a big piece of work that, especially with mass participation award and Chris Robb, we've been busy with. There is a lot of health and science research. There's a big piece of work on changing or on improving regulations for athlete representatives. This is all very important, but it's not in the scope of today's presentation, and it's not part of the label races system. As we designed regulations for a model for 2022, we needed a set of regulations that addressed uncertainty. Currently, we do have a season in many parts of the world. Whether or not this will be the case in next year, we don't know yet, hopefully so, but we needed to be really flexible. We needed a system that recognizes, acknowledges the differences in how different countries worldwide have the pandemic under control. But also, since you want to be fair, we needed a system that didn't give too much of an advantage or a disadvantage to races happening in a particular season of the year as opposed to late year season. Like I said, races are still free to skip 2022, and whatever happens in 2022, whether they have a basic label, whether they have no label at all, doesn't affect a race's ability or likelihood to get any label in 2022. The system will be, again, a simplified three-tier system with the basic World Athletics label, the World Athletics Elite label, and the World Athletics Elite Platinum label. So I think that Brett referred to these different tiers of races, meaning that there will be doping tests not only at Platinum races and at Elite Platinum label races, but also at lower tier road races. The basic label, what do you have to do to apply to qualify for a World Athletic label? Well, the event must have been held at least twice prior to 2022 for the simple reason that we don't necessarily want to place, to attach the World Athletics brand to events whose, let's say, safety we aren't entirely sure of. However, exemptions to this clause can be granted on a case-by-case basis at World Athletics discretion in case of experienced LOCs. So if you have an LOC that has successfully organized plenty of races in other parts of the country and wants to stage a big event in a different part, it's something we can consider. There needs to be an international measurement certificate valid on race day. This doesn't mean that when you apply, you have to have a certificate. In many cases, you won't have a certificate if the certificate has expired the years prior and your event is late in the year, but just make sure that, as most of you do anyways, by the time the event takes place, the race course has been certified. Label fees are unchanged from 2021 for this basic World Athletics label. The fee is $1,000 for 10Ks, a half marathon, and 2,000 for marathons. There is mandatory in-competition drug testing, again, reduced to a bare minimum, 2 men and 2 women, 4 tests all in all. I invite you to take advantage of Brett's offer to tap into, to use the centrally negotiated system, because you can really save up to 35–40% in some cases of on what you currently spend on in-competition drug testing. And then for first-time labels, World Athletics may, in some cases, will appoint technical consultants, what we call international technical delegates, to assist with quality control. So as you see, it's a very basic framework that deliberately designed to give to as many races as possible a way into the label races program. Then the second tier is the elite label. Very much the same things as the label. I should also note here that in case of first-time races that have a high elite budget, also in this case, World Athletics can consider giving the elite label to first-time applicants if circumstances warrant that. There needs to be an international measurement certificate. The label fees $4,000 US for marathons, 2,000 for all other distances. There need to be 8 in-competition drug tests, and World Athletics may always appoint a technical delegate. One thing on the label fee: if the race is cancelled, just like in 2020 and in 2021, 95% of the money will be canceled. So the race organizer remains liable only for 5% of the initially agreed amount. Why is it not zero? Because we like to think that everyone is, 2 reasons actually. One is that we start the AU starts spending money pretty much at the end of the year previous, starting all their, they need to staff up, they need to prepare intelligence monitoring, they need to plan testing. So there are some costs that occur anyways, irrespective of whether or not races take place, but also because we like to think that we are in this together and races are committed to the program, even if they are canceled. Only 5% due. On top of what I described, elite labor races have to demonstrate a commitment to elite running, and this is where the novelty comes. Two ways. The first is the pathway one is to host an elite competition, as it's always been the case, and to provide a minimum prize money, as it's been the case from last year. The pathway two is by contributing to a solidarity fund for elite distance runners. A bit more details on this. Now, the pathway one, elite athletes and minimum prize money. World Athletics elite labor races will need to have 5 men at the start, 5 men and 5 women, irrespective of their country or territory, allegiance, with at least one 1,100 points equivalent distance running performance obtained in 2020, 21, and 22. There is a little mistake here. It should be 2020, 21, and 22. Examples of 1,100 points equivalent performance are 2:13:31 men's marathon and 33:07 women 10K. So it's rather attainable. We're not asking, the pool of eligible athletes will be rather large. Why? Because we really wanted to make it attainable to as many races as possible, irrespective of where in the world they're held. These are the minimum prize money to be had at elite level competitions. Now, what happens if a race organizer in a particular country is really keen on getting a superior label for whichever reason, marketing reason, because the government wants something else, because they, as we hope we all do, they really are keen on investing in elite athletes, but there are travel restrictions that make that unattainable. I think US with many places, or China, or I don't know what will happen in Australia and New Zealand last year. Well, there is a new pathway, which is what we call Solidarity Fund for Elite Distance Runner. The concept here is very simple. Rather than investing money in elite race at home, you invest money in elite running. It's something that has already happened in 2021, and there was the case of a platinum label event that was not able to stage an international competition at home. So what they did was to provide to World Athletics an amount roughly equivalent, less, but not incredibly different from how much they would have invested in organizing an elite race at home. Then we had discussions with the ARs, and we ultimately concluded that it was in the best interest of the sport in that particular moment to invest the money in that particular way. Now we want to make this institutionalized for 2020. So if a race wishes to get an elite label, but is not confident of their ability to do it at home, this is what they can do. This fund will be managed by World Athletics, and this is crucial in consultation with the contributing races and with the athlete representatives. Why is it so important that both parties participate? Well, athlete reps, because we are first and foremost here to serve the athletes, so they, on behalf of the athletes, should tell us how, which cohorts of athletes are suffering the most, which are needing more competition opportunities, which athletes are unable to leave the country, therefore we should do something for them. But also we want the contributing race organizers, because at the end of the day, it's their money, and they should be given an opportunity to say, Alessio, World Athletics, we want to invest the money on this project rather than this project because it better serves our marketing goal, our PR goals, our political goals, whatever. And possible uses of this fund include the establishment of ad hoc races, the co-funding of elite fields at existing races, or we can even create a grant system entirely, as World Athletics did, not road races, but the whole of World Athletics did at the beginning of the pandemic, back in it, when, if I'm not mistaken, 500,000 plus 500,000 US dollars were made available to athletes worldwide. There were some criteria that had to be fulfilled, and then this money was paid into the athlete's bank account. We will be looking to do something similar if the ARs and the contributing races feel that that is the best use of this money. I would also like to know that the ethical compliance officer of World Athletics will be part of this process, and also based on how much appetite there is, if we realize that this pot really attracts a significant amount of money, for sure there will be a structured way to decide how this money is spent, so that the instances of all players of the distance running industry are taken into consideration. Then there is the third, the superior label, the platinum label. Who can get this label? Only races that have been granted platinum in 2020 or 2021. So as a matter of fact, this really restricts the number of potential applicants to no more than 12, if I'm not mistaken. Again, there should be a valid measurement certificate. Label fees are very much like last year, 50,000 for marathons and 20,000 for all other distances, 12 in competition drug tests. And there also need to be, at the race organizer's expense, 3 competition blood tests in the context of the athlete biological program. On who exactly? On any athlete defined as part of the international elite field by the race organizer. So if you have 120 people elite field and you want to have tests on all of them, you're free to do so. If conversely, what you deem contender for the race is much smaller, that is the group of athletes on which pre-competition blood tests have to be performed. Obviously, there is also in these elite platinum label races a commitment to elite running, and it's very much like in the elite label. So either you host a world-class elite competition or you contribute to the Solidarity Fund. The only difference is that for elite platinum label races, there is no minimum prize money requirement. However, the category of athletes that must be invited to fulfill this criterion is significantly higher. You're looking at 1,175 points equivalent performances obtained in 2020, 21, and 2022, which translates roughly to, precisely to 216 men's marathon, 225.47 women's marathon. Again, this is nothing extreme, nothing unattainable. However, if an event organizer is unable to do that, like this was exactly the case of the Xiamen Marathon last year, these are the amounts that they will be invited to offer to contribute to the Solidarity Fund, and the mechanics are exactly the same. Quick clarification on the scoring tables of athletics to avoid confusion further down the line. Now, the currently used scoring tables have been published in February 2017, and they're still used. They still have the IAAF logo. Why? Because a new version is coming. They usually come after each Olympic Games. A new version is coming in the first months of 2021. That will be relevant in the context of elite and elite platinum label application. So we thought, and this will be included in the label regulations document, it would be much easier to have time results. So these are the time results, the minimum, if you wish, the thresholds, above which performances must have been recorded by athletes in the 2 years prior to the race, to count towards fulfillment of the commitment to elite racing criterion in the context of elite and elite platinum label applications. We will share all this in due time with race organizers. An important note on the application procedures. Applications aren't open yet, simply because our constitution mandates that there need to be certain rounds of approval, governance commission, athletes commission, council. We are confident that around the 10th or 12th of October, we will be able to publish regulations, and immediately after, we will open applications, and they will stay open for a month. All races need to submit an application within the window, irrespective of whether or not their 2021 edition has already been held. So if you are Valencia, San Silvestre, December events that haven't had their 2020 edition yet, you should apply for 2022 within the deadline. The application form will not ask you many information about 2021. So even if the event hasn't taken place, no big deal. Unlike 2021, only applications already signed by member federations will be accepted. Last year, we were in a bit of a hurry and we we did accept some applications that weren't countersigned. With the benefits of hindsight, it wasn't a good idea. Some federations ended up not supporting applications. So for the sake of clarity and to avoid bypassing number of federations, because World Athletics is first and foremost a confederation of national athletic association, they should approve all applications. This is not just a formal thing. It's important because by signing, by supporting a label application, the National Athletic Association accepts the jurisdiction, if you will, of the event goes from them to World Athletics with a whole range of implications, especially in what concerns anti-doping and disciplinary procedure. So this is crucial. No member federation signature, the application will not be considered. I described earlier that there is this pathway, this new pathway too, but clearly we suggest that everyone applies with the traditional pathway, with the traditional approach. So let's assume that everyone will have proper elite competition. Let's assume that everyone will be able to have world-class elite races at home. If then further down the line, for the continuation of COVID containment regulations, a race organizer realizes that it will not be possible for them to stage an elite race at home, they still have time. They always have time up to 2 months prior to race day to downgrade the label. We really don't want anyone to invest money that they hadn't set aside at the beginning of the year. So if you apply for elite, but then you realize you are not able to have that athletes, you don't have to necessarily pay into the Solidarity Fund. You're always free to drop to World Athletics label. However, if you don't inform us 2 months prior to race day, we will assume that you have opted for the Solidarity Fund and we will issue an invoice accordingly. And why is this? Again, because we need to plan together with the AAU our anti-doping activity. Opting for a basic World Athletics label, like you said, or not applying altogether in 2022 doesn't affect races' ability to get labels in 2023. So technically, you can pick up from where you left off in 2020. Like in previous years, since we like to think of this as a shared commitment to anti-doping, there is also a progressive contribution payable by athletes and ARs. However, unlike last year, where we didn't know by the time regulations were published the amount of this levy, now we have set it. So it's going to be 1.5% on the published gross prize money before penalties and taxes for the top 5 finishers at the race. So it's very simple, very straightforward. So race organizers getting elite and elite platinum races, not including those that choose for the Solidarity Fund, will have to withdraw 1.5% on their prize money, and then after the race, they will receive an invoice for the corresponding amount, as it is the case already for late 2021 season races. In the context of the World Athletics rankings, I would like to point out that just like last year, now that we have these 3 simplified categories of races: label, elite label, and platinum label, there are 3 categories of competitions as far as the world rankings placing points are concerned. So that hasn't changed. However, if races get a platinum or an elite platinum or an elite label through pathway 2, through contributing to the Solidarity Fund, and so without having an actual world-class elite competition on their home soil, these races will be considered in the context of the world ranking, just like the World Athletics, the basic label races, so category E, as far as placing points are concerned. In the application form, this is something slightly unrelated. In the application form, you will find this box. We will ask you precise questions about what kind of TV coverage you have at the event. Clearly, there is no obligation as to TV production or distribution. We do hope that, given that most of your races have some of the best athletes in the world at the start, athletics fans worldwide will be able to see the competition, but that isn't a requirement. Do what you can, do what is useful for your business model, do what you think is right. We will be asking you questions on the kind of TV coverage that you have and the kind of distribution arrangements you have, simply because we're planning, and this is an old discussion which is now being redeveloped. We're studying the feasibility of an over-the-top platform from 2023. So we need to understand how many races would be keen in participating in this product. So there will be a question on that. Don't be surprised. And clearly, participation to this program will be optional. If you have already sold your broadcast rights and your streaming rights all over the world, that is fine. However, if there are, in many cases, a number of territories that are dark, a number of territories where your great races aren't seen, we are trying to do something to help there. And we believe it's a good opportunity because you will be, it's another thing that you can in turn sell to your sponsors, sell to your government. World Athletics will provide English commentary. That is the idea, as well as maybe consistent TV overlays to make this feel more like an international series. Also, as you might remember, until a couple of years ago, World Athletics would really do coverage on our website of all label road races. Then when the number of label races became really, really high, and at the same time, when due to the pandemic adjustment in the regulations, not all label races had world-class elite competitions. We rolled that back a little bit. We basically started writing fewer articles. Now, together with Jakob and our communications team, we are really keen on giving more space to road races, not only from an elite standpoint, but also we would really like to tell more stories about how races are being organized, why it's so important for for societies and communities that events are back, how race organizer A or B has overcome all sorts of troubles to stage a marathon in the heart of a European or American capital city, while the pandemic is not fully under control yet. So there will be an enhanced commitment from World Athletics for the communications to help you with communications, and also, and this is already happening, with technical assistance when it comes to the implementation of the shoe regulation. So if you have your races in the next few months and you are unsure as to how to enforce the shoe regulations, reach out to us. In many cases, we will even be able to come there or to send someone there. Worst case scenario, we can have a call in which race organizer, elite athletes coordinator, member federations, technical officials, anyone who's involved in organizing and officiating the races can be explained what the current protocols are, and together we can solve problems. And that was our presentation, Chris, and happy to take any questions that there might be. I see that there are a few in the chat already that I haven't opened yet.
Thanks for that, Alessio. I think maybe if you're happy to jump straight in and pick them up out of there, or you'd like me to read them to you, whatever you're most comfortable with.
You're right. So John is asking, if a race organizer is Gianni De Madonna, AR, is not paying athletes after a label race, what is World Athletics able to do? At the moment, nothing. And this is a job that World Athletics must do. Gianni, the leverage that we have is, and we had this conversation numerous times online and offline, is not giving labels, okay? If you are aware of any races that haven't honored their contracts, and you're really willing to not to negotiate, not to find a compromise, as it's been the case for some other races in the past, well, let us know, and we will consider these races as non-compliant with the label races regulation, and therefore withhold the label until the monies are paid. It is understandable that in the times that we're living, some races might have cash flows issues. However, if a race organizer, if an athlete, I should say, if an athlete is not due the money that they were promised, and there is no agreement between the athlete rep and the race, we should know, and then label will be withheld until an agreement has been found. Another question from Johnny. ARs at the moment must have an insurance. Why not organizers? Again, another old question. at a road running commission meeting back in 2018, this was discussed and dismissed. If you think that there is a case for asking insurance also from race organizers, it's certainly a discussion that we can have. Again, why World Athletics allowed organizers to continue to organize races even if they did not pay athletes? Well, Johnny, I wish I had the power to stop races from happening, but races likely happen irrespective of what World Athletics tell them. What we can do, jokes aside, the leverage that we can have is on giving or not giving them. Tracy Sandland, on slide 8, what qualifies at high elite budget? Let me get back to slide 8, Tracy, and try to address your question. Well, okay. Bottom line, Tracy, is if a race that hasn't had a label before takes place in typically in the Gulf or in Asia, and there is a big budget, but the event hasn't held a label before, it is in the best interest of the sport and the World Athletics that this race is in the system rather than out, for a number of reasons. Because if an event is in the label system, they are obliged to do in-competition testing, they are obliged to provide us information about who's running, they are financially contributing to the other competition integrity program. We have jurisdiction, we have an ability to monitor compliance with the technical rules. For example, there have been instances in the past in which races didn't have an international measurement certificate, and that goes to the detriment of the athletes, because without that, athletes don't score points for the rankings, which has internal impact on championships and Olympic Games qualification. So this is to say that if a race has a significant, I don't really have a threshold, but if we know that the race is able to attract, by virtue of their elite budget, good enough athletes, we are open to consider granting labels, even if the event hasn't had the 2 editions prior. I hope that answers to the question. So there is another question from Luis Saladier, former World Athletics competition manager, now at the Spanish Federation. Will World Athletics appoint a technical expert or technical delegate in the elite platinum label? Luis, much like before, it's always a judgment call that we make based on factors, based on availability of technical delegates, on profile risk of the race, based on interest of the race as well. To give an example, at the Berlin Marathon last weekend, we didn't have a technical delegate, David Katz. Why? Because it was a pretty high-profile event with lots of media, lots of world-class athletes, world record-beating potential, and we thought that we needed to be prepared in case questions would have occurred as to shoe regulations compliance. I assume that you're asking for Valencia. Yes, we will do it for Valencia as well. Davor, in relation to Johnny's comment, travel refunds are taking longer and longer, with airlines seeking payments from ARs faster and faster. This should be addressed by World Athletics and event organizers. Same instance, if a manager wants World Athletics to take action, you tell us and we'll take action. Common sense. In some cases, you don't want the race organizer. In some cases, you don't want to jeopardize that relationship between an agent and the race organizer. But if there is no space for a compromise, it is our role to enforce our own labor regulations. So definitely consider this as a situation of non-compliance. Crawling around the questions here. Tracy, you did not understand slide 14. Let me get back to slide 14. It's very simple. Athletes and their managers are contributing to funding the integrity program, the other competition testing program. So if an athlete wins a prize money of let's assume that there is a prize money of 10,000 advertised for the win in the race, irrespective of bonuses, penalties, taxes, everything else, 150, is that right? 150 dollars go into the integrity program. So as a matter of fact, the actual price that the athlete is getting is not 10,000, but is 9,850. Then whether or not there are bonuses, penalties, taxes, that is for the race to check with the athletes, but we will budget $150 as coming from that athlete's prize money. I hope that answer. If it doesn't, text me or call me. Alessio from the Brazilian Federation is asking, event with the World Athletics label, what would be coherent? Start with men and women together or a separate start? Entirely your call, Alessio. Even at the highest level of the sport, you have races, London, New York, that have dedicated women-only start races, other races that Berlin do it all together. It really is down to the individual preferences, to what your city authorities allow you. Certainly, but this is a purely personal preference. If you do a women-only start, it gives the same relevance to the women's competition as it does to the men. But it's entirely your call. Reach out to the various World Marathon Majors organizers in this chat to have more information on that. I'm keeping scrolling. Kingsley Ozumba, is the World Athletics labels different from the normal labels category? I'm not sure I understand your question, Kingsley. The thing is, in 2021 and in 2022, there is no gold, silver, bronze. There are only 3 labels: the basic one, the elite, and the elite platinum. Jean-Paul Bruyère, can we get the PowerPoints? You will, not only the PowerPoints, but also draft regulations, being it understood that they are in the final regulations, but 99% they will be what Council will approve in a few days' time. And I think we have exhausted all the questions here. Let me see what we have in the chat, in the Q&A. Andreas Meyer, will labor races get coverage on World Athletics channel? Yes, like I said, we will do our best to give everyone the best possible coverage. And then, no, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think you've picked them all up. Thanks, Alessio. Great, insightful presentation, and thanks for answering all those questions. That brings us to a wrap. It's been a wonderful session. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we had more than 400 people registered, and well over, I think we had 250 online at one stage, which is great numbers in these times. Generally, you find sometimes tracking at 30–40% of those that signed up. People watching it on Facebook Live. As I mentioned, it was being streamed into China, courtesy of CGX and Julia Tree's team there. So really great insights. Just reiterating that we will send out a link where people can download the presentations and other information that's been shared here. It's been recorded, as I mentioned, live on Facebook. So if any of your colleagues missed that, you can go back and watch it. And it's also being recorded, and we will be posting it on the Mass Participation World YouTube channel in the next few days. And as well as just a couple of quick date reminders, Strength in Numbers, our MPW monthly initiative on the 4th and 5th. That's for those of you that are not aware of it, it's an open chat room. Two of the key points that we've been hearing recently, people really struggling with supply chain and struggling with staffing and volunteers. So we're going to be specifically addressing that. And that then moves us to our next MPW web series on the 14th of October, where we're going to be talking specifically about volunteers, volunteer management. We have Shannon Gove from Rostify, and a really interesting panel that are going to be sharing some insights into that space. But thanks again for joining us. I'm now going to head straight back to Alessio to wrap up the show. Thanks for staying with us the duration, and look forward to seeing you again in October. And I think Alessio is going to share some details of that now. Over to you, Alessio, to wrap it up. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chris. No, very quickly, a couple of general interest announcements from World Athletics Running. The first one was shoe regulations implementation. Do reach out to us. The protocol is not set in stone. Like we said, it's not captured in a regulatory document yet. So it's very much for us as an industry, as a sport, to define. If you have doubts, reach out to us and we will work it out. I owe an answer to some World Marathon Majors organizers from USA. We will try to set up a call together with David Katz and try to address those the proposed protocols there. Global Running Conference. You might recall that we were floating at some point the idea to have it in Thailand at the end of the year. That is still, Thailand is still very much keen on hosting the conference. However, as we have postponed the World Trail and Mountain Running Championships, I say we, but in reality it's ITRA, WMRA, and the Ultra Runners Association. Anyway, as this event has been postponed, and as there is still uncertainty with respect to international travel in Thailand, the country has delayed by 1 month for reopening to international tourism. We are not having the Global Running Conference in November. However, there are still plans there are new plans actually, to have it in the first semester of 2022, most likely in the month of March, depending on when the amazing Thailand Bangkok Marathon gets organized, which is the event off the back of which we will do our Global Running Conference. Then I mentioned the Trail Running Championships. On the 21st of October, we will have a dedicated webinar on trail and off-road running. There will be Mark Hurst, our own Mark Hurst, presenting the bids, opening bids for the 2023 edition of the World Trail and Mountain Running Championships, which is a very interesting property, and we're seeing an ever-increasing number of cities, governments, race organizers taking an interest in that. It's an exciting, new, fast-growing part of the sport. So even if this is a road running webinar, many of you might have an interest in that. Many of you might know people with an interest in that. Make sure to be there if you can on the 21st of October, because on the 1st of November, there is a deadline for applications, if I'm not mistaken. So that is when the deadline for expressions of interest. So that is when the webinar will happen. I think that sums it up all, Chris. I'll be traveling to a few road races myself. I look forward to see, unfortunately for the time being, only in Europe, hopefully later this year also to some other continents. I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible around the circus. And remember, we're always not only open for business, but also open for suggestions. So reach out to us and tell us how we can improve how we do things and how we can best help you. Thank you for joining. It's a wrap, and happy marathon season, everyone.